Well, one of the biggest deceptions involved in our use of porn is that it doesn't cost us anything. You know, at a surface level, that actually is something that can feel true. Today, however, I want to explore the hidden costs of your porn use, things that you may not be aware of or may not have thought about, or things that have remained conveniently under the surface of your awareness. So welcome aboard.
Ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Well, if you've been tracking with me for any period of time, you've heard about the Circle Learning Platform. And it's an online platform. It's free. You can go on. It's something, all you need to do is download the Circle app, or if you're on your computer, you can just sign up, make an account, and go on and get access to a whole bunch of different recovery resources that I've created under free resources. There's also information there on all the podcasts that I have created between the two different podcasts that I run. And also there's information there on the Finding Traction course. You can watch a free video. You can learn more about the Finding Traction courses that people are running. Some guys are using them individually. Other guys are using them with their recovery buddies. I have some churches and counseling centers that use them. And finally, there's information there about how to become part of a Finding Traction group. And all of that can be found on the Circle platform. It's free to join, so I encourage you to do that. You can use a pseudonym or your first name, last initial, or some version of that if that's important to you. And if you need more information or you just want to connect with me and do a free Zoom call, I'd love to meet you. My email is bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. All right, let's go back and talk about the costs of our porn use. Well, how do you actually determine the costs of addictive behaviors? Some of them are pretty straightforward. For example, the average cigarette smoker spends around $4,000 to $5,000 a year. So over a lifetime, depending how long you live, which may be shorter if you're a cigarette smoker, that could come to somewhere in the neighborhood of $150,000 to $200,000. But it's pretty easy to calculate those costs. Our sexual struggles, addictions, behaviors are not as quantifiable, are they? Years ago, I heard Doug Weiss, who is known in the sexual addiction field. He estimated that the average sexual addiction costs somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000. We'll say that's American, not Canadian, but $300,000. And my first thought when I heard that is, well, he must be dealing with some very different people than me, or the people that I work with. I mean, after all, most of the internet is free, right? I mean, at least it's free on the front end. As the saying goes, if you're failing if you're paying for internet porn, you're not doing something right. Now, it is worth noticing, noting that the porn industry does its very level best to monetize and pull you into some sort of paid experience. I do run across people and work with people who have, given into some of those efforts, and they do pay for some version of more individualized or personalized versions of porn, and we're not going to go into any more details here on that. So it's true that some people can look at direct monetary costs, but in general, most of our online behaviors don't cost or have an immediate monetary sacrifice. So what are the costs, you say? Well, most of the costs that we pay are hidden. And most of the costs are ones that you can't put on a spreadsheet. Now, I want to outline 5 or 6 of them that might or might not be relevant to you depending on your stage of life. But I think that if you think about these things, you are going to realize, even though I might not be able to put a immediate dollar cost on these things, they are important. And actually, there is a monetary cost to these things when you look at missed opportunities. So, I bet that if you are well down the porn rabbit hole as a lifestyle, if you are truly honest, some of these you can relate to. And I would submit to you that these do have real costs in your life. So let me give 5 or 6 of them. Here's the first one. Distance from life-giving friendships. One of the insidious aspects of going down the porn rabbit hole as a lifestyle is that it leads to social isolation. I hear this from guys over and over again when they talk about their porn life, is they talk about some aspect of isolating from friendships. They usually don't say, hey, let's have a bunch of guys over and let's watch porn. That's usually not what they're saying, at least not the guys that I work with. And, stories like people would invite them out for some kind of party, or we're going out, or we're doing something. And they would make that calculus in their mind. Gee, I could go out, but I could also, and I would much rather just stay home and watch porn. It's so much easier. It's so much more enjoyable. It's so much more exciting. Yeah, it is a bigger problem for the introverts of the world, but I've seen aspects of this coming even from extroverts. Now, let me also say, when we are younger, it actually seems to be easier to develop friendships. And so many guys who did develop friendships when they're younger, they actually have the ability to go back and enjoy and build on these friendships for years and years as they get older. Maybe it was their college buddies or people they knew in high school. And so if you were skimping on these friendships, if you were not building these friendships, you're actually affecting your life for years and years later in ways that you don't even realize. I mean, how do you cost something? How do you miss something that could have been there, but now isn't going to be there? It is a hidden cost. Well, here's a second one, which is slightly related to that. It causes us distance from our opposite sex relationships. I mean, there's no surprise that porn throws a wrench into our building of healthy relationships with the opposite sex. I mean, this might sound like the opposite of what I just said on the previous one, but I do run across guys who have lots of guy buddies and they go out and do stuff with their guys, but they have very little real relationships with the opposite sex. Now, I also realize it's a bit of a chicken and the egg thing here, that a lot of people turn to porn because they feel uncertain or insecure around women. Perhaps they've even been rejected at some level or had some sort of bad experience, which just reinforce that sense of unease. But whether it's the chicken and the egg, I think we could all safely say that, our viewing of porn certainly doesn't help us move towards building of these necessary relationships. Think about it. Learning how to talk with them, how to relate to women, how to build friendships with them, how have conversations. That's an important part of maturation. Going on dates, meeting one-on-one with women. I listened to this great podcast, Mel Robbins, and it was the only dating advice you'll ever need. You're going, what are you listening to dating podcasts if you've been married almost 40 years? I just found it fascinating to listen to her. I'm not sure who passed it on to me, but essentially she was saying things like, you know what? You need to go out on lots of dates. You need to give up on your stupid expectations. She had the joke in there about women that said, I'm only going to date a guy that's 6 feet tall. She said, that's just stupid. She had, versions for guys. And it's this whole idea that porn robs us of just the normal social growth in those areas. And it doesn't necessarily mean just one-on-one dating. It could be going out with groups of guys and girls, doing things, going on hikes together, all sorts of areas. And I just think that it's something that the more and more we're involved in porn, the less and less we actually work on building real healthy relationships. We see, women only through sexual lenses. It fuels unrealistic expectations about the kind of girl we'd want to date or be married to. All of those things are the hidden costs of our porn use. So because we don't feel confident, because we don't feel secure, because we feel uneasy around women, we settle for some sort of fantasy, voyeuristic sort of relationships instead. Well, and then we wonder why we're still single. We wonder why we're not confident around women. We'll get back to that confident thing later. Here's the third thing: hidden costs. Underdeveloped gifts, education, or career growth. Think about it. In order to move forward, you need a certain degree of agency over your own life to set goals and then take the steps and do the hard work to move towards them. You could not advance by just becoming a victim. Well, as a result, I'm a victim because all of these forces are against me, or people are holding me back. Instead of you taking an honest look at what are your deficits and then working on improving them. If you're in a dead-end job, then at some point you have to be able to say, I need to retrain or re-educate myself to have a better chance of achieving the kind of outcomes I desire. The bottom line is we are way more passive than we need to be. And I think porn just adds to that. It adds to that fact that we don't advocate for ourselves. You might say, well, I don't see the connection, Vern, but it's again comes back to this passivity that we've trained in ourselves. It partly, I think, is connected with this next one, number 4, which is an overall lack of confidence. Once again, in order to grow and succeed in life, you need to live on your front foot and leaning forward. And I just say, and I found this in my own life, the more and more I was mired in pornography, I was also mired in timidity and insecurity. I mean, I was either worried about getting caught, or I felt like everybody could see the kind of guy that I really was. And when you're caught in this endless cycle of lather, rinse, repeat, acting out, regret, self-loathing, it's hard for you to really step or move forward on your front foot, have any kind of confidence moving forward. I especially see this in spiritual circles. How many people, for example, don't step out using their spiritual gifts or serving in their local faith community because they don't feel worthy of being used by God because of their secret sexual lives? So they hang back. If there's one thing that it's that phrase, they hang back, that sums up a lot of what I see going around in terms of the hidden costs of porn use. Number 5 is, I think, a hidden cost I've seen. I'm just going to call this a diminished joy or passion for things in life and life in general. The other day I was stopped at a stoplight and I saw this fellow whose pants were halfway down his butt. He was disheveled. He probably hadn't bathed or showered in months. His clothes were in tatters, and he was stumbling across the car in front of me, but he was in this euphoric drug high. He was in this euphoric drug high, but he was disheveled, and his life was falling apart in every other way. And I bet if you could ask him, he would say something along the lines of, everything is meaningless in comparison to finding that next euphoric hit. Now, that is obviously an extreme example, but I think it has relevance here. When we have trained our brain on the thrill and buzz of porn, most of life's other simple joys don't feel very exciting, or they don't feel very pleasurable. I did 2 whole episodes on this back, episode 63 and 64, where I talk about this term anhedonia, which is all about the inability to experience joy. And just to summarize a couple of those things, let's say we gave a number from 0 to 10, 0 being, totally depressed, 10 being totally alive and excited. And let's say we gave internet porn an 8 or a 9. Now, apparently crystal meth is like an 11, but I think I'll stick with the 8 or 9. But you ask, well, what about life's other pleasures, like playing on a sports team, or woodworking, or out for a hike in the woods, or up a mountain, or, whatever that is? What number would you say that would be? Well, chances are it's not an 8 or a 9. Maybe it's a 3, 4, 5. Maybe it's a 6, depending on how you're wired. But when you have the buzz of porn ringing in your ears, it really truly affects your ability to experience joy in other things. And that's a hidden cost that most people are not aware of. I would say this, that one of the biggest gifts of recovery is learning over time, once the buzz, once the rush, once that ringing in your ears begins to quiet itself, is beginning to enjoy those simple things in life. But early on, I would say this, the loss of joy is one of the biggest costs, the hidden costs of porn use. Well, the last one I want to give, and this is obviously related to if you're older, I'm just going to call this passive parenting. As I work with guys in our Finding Traction groups, one of our lessons is about our life story. And almost all the guys say some version of this. They say, you know what, growing up, my parents or my dad really never explained anything to me about my body or about sex or about girls or helped me navigate through adolescence. So I ended up, out of either curiosity or pain or naivety, turning to some of these things. And that's where these lifelong struggles, these lifelong patterns began to set in. So you would think, of course, that guys like that would be doubly sure, would do their very level best to not do that with their own kids. But you know what I see? They repeat something similar with their own kids. Well, why is that? Maybe the same reason their parents did or didn't do that. Because they don't feel like they have integrity. They don't have confidence in this area. Or they'll be called out, or their kids will ask them, well, do you look at porn, Dad? And since they can't really deal with the incongruity of their own lives, they remain passive. And so the cycle continues. So as we've been going through these things, I know that you probably haven't been able to itemize these on a spreadsheet or a cash register. As we start talking about them, though, maybe this idea of $300,000 is not far off. Maybe, some of these things are worth a lot more than we've cared to admit. Question for you. What are the hidden costs you've experienced? The costs that you don't like to admit, or maybe when you start looking at it, you go, oh my goodness, this has actually left me far more passive, far more timid, far more, far less likely to step forward in life and deal with the things and grow in the areas that I need to grow. So many of the guys have said it's like porn has caused me to push the play button or the pause button on my life. So I'm on pause. And so many of these areas that I really wanted to grow in my life have simply remained on pause. And I've suffered for it. I've had all of these costs that have accrued over time. So what are the costs you're aware of? I'd love to hear from you. Email me again at bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com with your comments. Till next time, we'll see you then.